Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, and it's my privilege to serve as your moderator for this great event today. It is really under conditions like this that you get to know who your friends are. And I have to say, it's great to be in a community of friends. And the other thing that I love of looking at this very full room is that you know, Illinois' nonprofit community is a community that shows up. You know, there's not a lot that will keep you away from where you need to be, and it makes me really proud to be among you as a peer and colleague today. So thank you for being here. I'd like to invite our responders to approach the stage. First, we're going to hear from Sharon Bush, the Director of Elgin Programs for the Grand Victoria Foundation, and Senior Program Officer.
Thank you, Mae. It's blinding up here. But I'm really excited to be here to help kick off the 40th anniversary. Thanks for having me. So I understand I have about 45 seconds to make 3 points in response to Sterling's comments. So the first point I want to make is I think that all of us should challenge the power dynamic. I think that Sterling asked a couple of times who will lead, and I think many will lead. I think we know that from some of our work, but I also believe that grantees often lead even when they don't know that they're leading. So I believe they have power, and I believe that we need to figure out ways to be very supportive of their leadership. The second point I'd like to make is that cross-sector collaboration, it assumes that there's organization within a sector. And I think in some cases we have to be careful to not put the cart before the horse. So what do we mean by cross-sector? Sometimes we need to organize within the sectors to better work across sectors. And third, and lastly, in this new world of collaboration, I think we cannot lose sight of the fact that process is as important as products. So supporting process, I think, is an element of risk that we need to start building into our grant-making culture.
All right, thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Mark Ishaug, President and CEO of Thresholds.
Thank you. Thank you, Mae, and good afternoon, everyone. Sterling, you nailed it. Just a little provocative, I would say. And your comments about giraffes will not go unanswered. But that's for later in my comments. So on camping trips when I was a kid, my dad always said at pack-up time, Sparky, let's leave the campsite better than we found it. God, this annoyed me. Why should I clean up somebody else's mess? I was only 7 at the time. And Dad said because it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing for the next camper, and in 3 or 4 weeks, we will be the next camper. And what a life lesson that was. And our campsites, as you pointed out, and I think you said, are broke and seriously underperforming. Our campsites are a mess. Homelessness and hunger, violence and domestic violence, mental illness and substance abuse, and horrific health disparities driven by race and class. These are just a few of the campsites that need our immediate collective attention. But we collectively have the ideas and we have the capacity. We have done so much good, and we have so much to be proud of, but we have so much more to do. We need to scale up fast. We need investment, public and private, not just charity. We need investment. We need political will. We need shared and diffused leadership, as you mentioned. And as Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lennon said, we need love and we need a revolution. So I want to talk about those 2 things and a lot more, and giraffes. And to Pete Seeger, we shall overcome.
Thank you, Mark. And finally, we're going to hear from Alejandra Ibañez, Program Officer with the Oak Park River Forest Community Foundation.
Great, colleagues. Thank you. Sterling, thanks much for your poetic challenge and support to the collective action Donors Forum. And so many of us in Illinois and throughout our nation are aspiring to do and ready to raise our sleeves and get to work. As a national community organizer, excuse me, too many notes, and current program officer, I hope we are all moved to the work collective impact and collective action model. Despite our numerous assets, we too have been challenged with disparities that keep all our youth from reaching their full potential. It is a new day. A day for foundations to be like the transformative monarch butterfly, my own mascot, that go through their own metamorphosis and come to fly alongside their community to the same destination, true system change, through collective impact, through collective action. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra. We're going to begin our facilitated conversation in just a few minutes, but as we get that underway, I wanted to point out a couple of things that we're going to do for our audience Q&A at the end of our program. You will notice at the front here that we have 2 stand mics, and we really want to model this change in format that the Donors Forum is creating for itself as an organization moving forward. We want this to be broad-based, inclusive. We want to have a conversation with all of you. So I'd like to invite you, as you start thinking about your questions, to gradually work your way up to the microphones. And we're going to have a rapid-fire format that will allow us to take as many questions as possible. I'll give some more guidelines about that as the time comes, but just wanted to point those out so you can be getting ready to participate in our conversation with us. Mark, let's start with you. You run a $65 million nonprofit corporation, and Threshold is already working at the intersection of government, private philanthropy, and business strategies. As you thought about pulling those entities together, what have you observed about how to do it well? What's been hard? What's worked? What's that been like for you?
Wow, okay, quite a order. Yes. Thank you, Mae, and thank you, everybody. I guess I'll talk to the audience and my panel members. But first, I do want to get to this giraffe thing. Because I would suggest that the nonprofit world, if Sterling wants to have the foundation world abandon the giraffe as its mascot, then I would say that we should probably take it on. And here's why. Giraffes are vegan. How enlightened is that? Right? They're super fast. They require less than 30 minutes of sleep a day. They are among the largest, strongest, and most peaceful animals on the planet. The heart of a giraffe is 24 pounds and 2 feet long. Giraffes seldom lie down. They nap standing up. They give birth standing up. They can live without water for a long duration, like many of us live without grants for several years. And they kick. Their kick is so strong that they can kill a lion in one. So, anyway, so I think if the nonprofit world wants to take on the giraffe, we could do it. I lived in Africa for 3 years, so I'm very defensive about our giraffe friends. So, I have been in the nonprofit world for 30 years, and I have never thought of myself as a person in the nonprofit world. I've only worked in nonprofits since college, graduation 30 years ago. I think that we are in the human service. We are human service corporations, social service corporations, public benefit corporations. So I hardly even think of ourselves as nonprofits, even though that is probably the word that we should use. We're benefiting a lot of people. We're profiting the world and the individuals we serve. I think the only thing that makes us nonprofit is our status, 2, the wages we pay our folks. But we have to invest our profits into our people and into our programs so that we benefit society. But what I love about the so-called nonprofit sector is the intersection of government, philanthropy, private investment, and the business world. And that is the sweet spot, and that's why I love being in the nonprofit world. So I'm going to just really briefly talk about 3 to answer your question. And I think working with the government, which for many of us as nonprofits is our biggest funder, is actually the most exciting of the work that we do. Because not only are we getting funding from the government, we get to play and are forced to play a policy role. We also are in boxing matches with our principal funder a lot. Not only do we take the money, but we have to be very aggressive about what we need and how we're going to get it. And I think that's a really exciting and very positive dynamic of not just taking money and asking for money, but helping shape how those resources are distributed. So that is one thing that I love. Private philanthropy, of course, is key to our success, but as a good friend and a mentor, Nikki Stein, who many of you know from the Koch brothers Foundation, told me 20 years ago, she said, Mark, we can't fund your program. It's too big. You need government money to win the fight against AIDS. We can make your programs better. We can help with innovation. We can help with capacity building. We can help with quality. And we can help make a program go from good to great. And so I thank Nikki for that. It really has made me reframe how I think about private philanthropy and the role of private philanthropy. And of course, individual philanthropy is so critical to our success. It's the individual donors and the major donors that combine with government and foundations to make our work. But for me, the future is really around private investment, and something that you've talked about, not just donations, not just philanthropy, but how we galvanize private investment for the nonprofit work that we do. And very quickly, I want to talk about two things that have made a huge difference. We are opening up this week a new program, a 51-unit former SRO in Chicago that's going to be turned into 51 apartment buildings for people with mental illness and other disabilities. We open up on Thursday. It's the city, the state, private philanthropy, and a private developer and Thresholds, a nonprofit that have come together to create a state-of-the-art housing and affordable housing program. So that's where I see our future, is completely in the intersection of those three.
All right, great, thank you, great example. Alejandra, you worked as a community organizer and activist before you became a grant maker. As you think about what it takes to get all three sectors moving, or at least pointed in the same directions, what are some lessons or principles about mobilizing a community around a shared agenda that could apply to what we're trying to do here?
You know, there are times where I'm really thankful for, my organizing years, though I always tell people that it kind of runs in my veins. So I come from a very political family. But I think there are so many great things that, as an organizer, that I've learned about recognizing and valuing all the assets in our community. So I think as funders, and I think to Sharon's point as well, we really need to recognize those assets. And many times they are the practitioners, they are the nonprofits, the change agents at the ground level who are making change. With or without our dollars, they are out there. So I think, one, as a funder, we need to really recognize and value the assets of our peers in working with now what were grantees and continue to be grantees, but see them also as peers, so that we are working in tandem. And so when I learned about the Donors Forum and their new approach to membership, I said, in that vein, we really need to start working as collaborators and as peers. And that is going to require a major paradigm shift. Here we go with paradigm shift. In regards to how we work with one another and being intentional in creating those spaces where practitioners can be at the table with us, and we recognize both the role and the power that we hold, and being able to create that safe space. Because we have to level the playing field. As a community organizer working in Pilsen for nearly a decade, we had to recognize our own assets, and many times those assets were the social fabric, the social networks of our community members. And in Pilsen, that was predominantly working class, working poor immigrant women. And so while many people may not have seen them as assets in the community, they were definitely assets to their own families, to their schools, to their neighborhoods, to their blocks. And so we really built off of them as assets in that social fabric that was actually starting to deteriorate due to a lot of things happening in the neighborhood, like school closures and gentrification. And so bringing that back home as a foundation, thinking about how we recognize and treat our peers if we're going to collaborate at a different level. So again, if we are going to do collective impact, collective action work, that requires that we have a shared vision. And to have a shared vision, we need to have shared language. And that is going to take one valuing ourselves and learning from one another. That is one of the major lessons learned, because if we're going to have impact, we have to be on the same page, same language, and have the same goals and work together towards those goals.
Great, thank you, thank you. Sharon, let's hear a little bit from your experience. You've worked at several different foundations, you've been involved in several different funder networks. Share with us an example of something you've been involved in that brought all three sectors together, and who led it, what was involved, and what was the result?
Sure, thanks. I just want to make a quick response to Alejandra's comments too. I think today is kind of emblematic of something that I believe about philanthropy, is that, like, everybody in here, we're probably all organizers in some regard, right? And I think that it's representative of the idea that none of us can make lasting change alone. Not one foundation, not one threshold. So I think, like, that's a role that I relish in this work. And I think over the years that I've been in philanthropy, I have been part of a bunch of collaborative efforts, because it's a really great way to leverage resources and to bring people together in order to work really efficiently and effectively, but also in an aspirational way. So I think really I'm going to give an example at my current foundation, that Grand Victoria Foundation, and I wasn't involved in this, but I think it's a great example of the role of a foundation as an organizer, which is the Wildlands Network. So this is something that's featured in the Donors Forum's new report, Engaging for Greater Impact. Take a look. But what it is the foundation created a platform really to bring a wide range of folks together to create a common agenda for preserving the state's land and water resources. And so, in this instance, there really is no single leader. The network has grown from 40 members to over 200. It includes conservationists, the public agencies, urban planners. It's interdisciplinary, and what these folks have done is they figured out ways to develop common language, so criteria for prioritizing the protection of the state's most important lands. It's catalyzed public and private partnerships to acquire and restore land. And its members really work hard to ensure that best practices in protection and conservation are consistently employed, so that it happens all the time. This is work that started in 2008. It continues today, so you have to take a long view to some of this work. And since that time, the foundation has been able to help support the protection of nearly 6,500 acres of land. So it's a great example of what you can do when people work together.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. That's a terrific example. And I just want to reinforce to read about it in the Donors Forum report. Sterling, I want to go back to something you said in your remarks. You know, there are some people who believe that foundations are society's only truly independent actors, and we need to keep it that way, right? They have no customers, no shareholders, no competitors, no natural predators. How do we balance the need to have that kind of independent thinking and action with the need to work together? Do foundations need an external push, and where should that come from?
Some people think it will come from government, and I don't think it will come from government. But what you describe, Mae, is also what describes the human being on the planet. No natural predators can really get a system out of balance. So I know foundations are jealous and protective of their independence and their natural pluralism they bring. different ideas, different approaches. But there's nothing in that that conflicts with trying to be more interdependent. When we look at how the strategy landscape mapping tools being used by some funders to at least understand what everybody is doing in a place. If I were a new donor, I would like to know what the landscape looks like as I start to come in. The problem with philanthropy is there is no rationality expected or demanded by foundations. Donors are free to do what they want, and some critics or analysts of philanthropy have said philanthropy is an expression of oneself, and it's not necessarily supposed to be about the best impact. When I invest in mutual funds, I want to maximize my return. Philanthropy doesn't always look to maximize any particular kind of return. But I would submit that the more foundations and philanthropists work in concert, I think their practice gets better. It goes back to something I think Mark said. I think philanthropy as best practiced is a team sport, not an individual sport. And I think even the sports of the martial arts, the best practitioners in martial arts learn how to use the force of their opponents and their obstacles. Mark said boxing, but to use a community's energy, to use it for a higher purpose, not just to defeat an opponent, but to practice an art. I don't think anything about looking for more integrated and interdependent work among foundations should scare a donor away from the table. It's still always reserved their right to do whatever they want with their charitable dollars.
Great, thank you. Well, let me ask you your perspective on that, Sharon. You know, we often hear foundations readily admit their own hypocrisy, that we tell the grantees to collaborate, but foundations themselves can't or won't. Why is this so hard?
It's an unnatural act by unconsenting adults.
Right, and in part, right? I think that, I think it's not dissimilar from what we see kind of broadly. I mean, I think there are many of the same reasons that we see why it's hard for anyone else to collaborate. I think there are issues of trust. I think that there are issues around shared agendas and language and, you know, what does it mean to work together. I think we all have our own sense of uniqueness and our own kind of, what is our unique contribution to, you know, what is the impact or you know, what kind of outcomes we all want to see. And so all of that is kind of, it's individualism. So I think it's human. And although we're talking about organization, it's human nature, and it's just a difficult thing to do. And you have to work really hard and really deliberately at it. And I agree. I think you make some very strong and very clear points about, you know, it's a team sport, and when we're able to figure out how to work together in a much more connected way, and that what we try to do is to work really hard at making and increasing the number of connections that we have as organizations. And we have seen, there are many examples of where there's change for the good.
I think you have to look at the nonprofit world in Chicago and the giraffes in the nonprofit world for some examples of this collaboration where it's really making a difference. Because I don't believe, and I think as you said, thresholds can't do it alone. None of us can do it alone. Last year, 34 nonprofits got together under the leadership of HHO, Heartland Health Organization, Heartland Health Outreach, and Dr. Karen Bhatia. And 34 of us got together from as big as Northwestern University to as relatively small as Housing Opportunities for Women, and 32 of us in between, to create a for-profit entity called Together for Health. It's a for-profit care coordination entity. We're going to try to compete with the big boys, with the Blue Cross Blue Shields and the Aetnas and the Illini Cares, to take better care of the people that we serve, that are homeless, those with mental illness and other health disparities. and we came together, trying to overcome our individual agendas to create something bigger and better. And it's a for-profit. So we're going to be looking to use Sterling and others to figure out how to galvanize, how to galvanize private investment. Because it's one thing to fund us charitably, it's another thing to invest in a corporation that hopefully will have better returns for the clients and better returns for the investors.
So that's a great example, Mark, and that was the 34 nonprofit organizations coming together. I want to ask you, what is the one thing that foundations could do differently that would change your ability to deliver on your mission? And as you're thinking about that, I want to personally guarantee your immunity in this room. And the reason I can guarantee your immunity is not because I've spoken to every funder out there, but because no foundation thinks you're ever talking about them. So you're totally safe to go ahead and answer freely.
Okay, no pressure. So I'm a community organizer and an advocate and a rabble-rouser by nature and by profession. I think the biggest impact the foundation world could have, so you said one thing, I'll combine them in two. Multi-year grants, 3 to 5 year grants, the one thing is multi-year grants that focus on systems change, non-partisan political advocacy, and grassroots organizing. Because all the philanthropic dollars in the world cannot solve the big challenges that we face. But we can, I believe, through good organizing, like the work of the Shriver Center and so many others, we can make a huge difference. We can bring more money into the system. We can rewrite the tax code in Illinois. We can make, put revenue on the agenda and not just what we're going to cut. But the only way we can do that is if folks invest in our policy work.
Okay. Well, I want to invite the rest of the audience, if you have something that you'd like to share in answer to that question as well, please work your way up to the microphone. We're going to begin our audience Q&A in just a minute. And as you are working your way up to the microphone, we're going to play a little round of Inside the Actors Studio. I know that Chicago is Oprah's town, but for those of you who have seen Inside the Actors Studio, they always end their interviews with something called the Proust questions. And I have a version of those that I'd like to ask each of our respondents to just go down the line with either a one-word or one-phrase answer. We're going to get that going and then open it up to you all to participate. So the first question is, who is the person or organization that has most influenced your thinking about the nonprofit sector? Sterling.
Can I use a lifeline?
You can pass the plane on back to you. Sharon.
Working in direct services. So that...
No, the person or organization.
Oh, person or organization.
Yeah.
Not the name of the organization.
Yeah.
I used to work for a mental health organization called Trilogy.
Trilogy. Great. All right. Alejandra.
I guess I'll go back to my own organizing roots and say Pilsen Alliance.
Very good. Mark.
I'll go back to my roots too, ACT UP, because we're going to end AIDS in our lifetime because of ACT UP.
Excellent. Excellent. Sterling, have you thought of your answer?
No, when you say organization, my roots too. My first job in the nonprofit sector as a receptionist in the community health center at the Humboldt Open-Door Clinic in Arcata, California. 6 months later, I was deputy director, and I worked for an executive director named Herman Spetzler, who they didn't have the term social entrepreneur at that time, but he was a crazy, out-of-the-box thinker in almost everything he did. And the fact that he was the first executive director I ever worked for in the sector set the bar really high.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. And because you're a keynote, you get a little more phrase. For the rest of them, we're going to try to keep them brief. What is one thing that you wish the other side of the table knew about your side of the table? Whether you're a grant seeker or a grant maker. Mark.
We rock.
Excellent. Alejandra.
I would say commitment to fail forward, creating a space where we can take risks and it's okay.
All right. Sharon.
There are roles to play other than writing checks.
All right. Roles to play other than writing checks. Sterling.
I know how hard I have to work for you to really trust me.
All right. Okay. What's your favorite philanthropy buzzword right now? Alejandra.
Collective action.
Mark.
Value proposition.
Sterling.
Emergent strategies.
Sharon.
Yeah, collective impact.
All right. Okay. If you want to know what any of these mean, all right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic are you that rancher and grantee relationships are moving in the right direction? 10 being the most optimistic, 1 being not very optimistic. Sharon.
9.
9. Alejandra.
9.
Mark.
8.
Sterling.
7.
7. All right. Very good. Very good. I'll be curious to see what the rest of you think about that. What word do you most hope people will use to describe you as a leader in your field? Mark.
He got things done.
Got to get this done. All right. That's going to be your tagline.
Get it done.
All right. Sharon.
Integrity.
Integrity. Sterling.
Honest.
Honest. Alejandra.
Intentional.
Intentional. Very good. What's your fantasy career if you were not in the nonprofit sector and doing the job you're in right now? Mark, you're going to get the last word. Sterling, let's start with you.
Being Pete Seeger.
Being easier. Very good. Very good. Sharon.
All right, so for those who know me, selling hot fancy shoes.
All right. All right. Alejandra.
I would say maybe like an investment banker.
Investment banker. All right. And Mark, because I believe grant seekers should always get the last word, you get to finish this round.
Oh my God, all the pressure again. No, I'm either going to be a female folk singer or sell perfume.
All right. Very good. Thank you all to our terrific panelists. I am thrilled to see that we're starting to get some folks lining up, and in order to get as much participation and be as inclusive as possible, we're going to do a rapid-fire question format, and it's going to go like this. These are Mae's moderator rules, okay? So I'd like you to give your name and your organization. Please do not give a long infomercial for your organization. Don't describe your program and how great you are. We know you're great. We already know that. If it takes you more than 30 seconds to say, it's probably not a question. So I will ask you to fast forward to the question, and I'm a very nice person, but I will cut you off. And what we're going to do is we're going to take about 3 or 4 questions at a time, see what kind of themes and ideas are bubbling up, and then let the respondents weigh in on those. And that way we'll get as many as possible. Why don't we start with the woman here on my right?
Ann Rossiter, Midwest Palliative and Hospice Care Center. It seems to me that the competitive world has created havoc with our economy, et cetera, et cetera. It seems to me that in the New Donors Forum perspective vision, we have an opportunity. I believe the opportunity comes from collaboration, but as important is creativity. How do you see the Donors Forum and our collaboration overcoming, as we have spoken, the mistrust? And so collaboration and creativity ideally can lead industry.
Great. Thank you for that question. Another question.
Clark Bell, journalist and director of the McCormick Foundation. Real world question. You've seen the hope and heartbreak of investing in Detroit. Kellogg, I believe, is one of the consortium of investors that has announced they're going to shore up Detroit's debt in order to save the public art. Wise decision or foolhardy strategy?
All right. Very good.
Who's that pointing to?
2 more questions. Here on my right.
It's really refreshing to hear the panelists talk about the value of the grantee
Foundation, what would they do with no nonprofits to give the money to?
All right, very good. Yes, one over here. Right.
Marie from Greater Good Studio, and I'm interested to hear more about this idea of funding process that you brought up in your opening remarks, as well as the potential to have the public involved in that process. We've heard a lot about organizing and the role that not just nonprofits and service providers, but also their clients or the general public might have a role to play.
Great, thank you. We're going to pause there for a moment and let our responders weigh in. We've talked about creativity, collaboration, investing in Detroit, community organizing, and what would you do without the nonprofits? Who would like to begin?
I would like to see a day where government recognizes the type of impact and innovation that nonprofits have been able to do with little to no resources. So, great question about what would happen if, government didn't need nonprofit. We would be happy to close our doors, I say, as practitioners of nonprofits, if we no longer had hunger, poverty, homelessness. I think we would all celebrate that day. But I think to get to that day, I think all of us, whether we're public servants, foundations, practitioners, need to value our work and recognize where innovation is happening, even when it's in a small nonprofit organization.
Great, thank you.
I think with regards to process, maybe I can best kind of talk it through with the recent experience, because I appreciate Mark's comments, although I do think they're provocative about what foundations can do differently in terms of funding, systems change and improvement, policy advocacy. But my colleague and I were in a meeting maybe a week or so ago with a policy advocate, and we were having a discussion about how are you going to get these programs that you want to see happen that are good best practices funded. Where is the money going to come from? And really, as we were having a discussion, the reality kind of hit me that that was the wrong question. That what we probably could focus on is to understand kind of the iteration that needs to happen in terms of what this group is trying to do to work with the public sector, different parts of the public sector that have to come together, because the public sector itself is split up into different sectors, what it means to bring their membership into the fold and have a voice, and what their role is in doing that, and bringing that voice to the table as a facilitator between the public agencies and between what nonprofits are doing, and not to forget the impact on people that policies and systems should be serving well. So all of that is super important. It's not, when you ask questions about, well, what's going to happen, it's not an easy answer to say, 100 people are going to get a better job tomorrow or better health care tomorrow. But it is important to understand that the progress that's made in bringing these folks together, because it's really hard and it takes a lot of time, is really important. And it's a really, that is a unique role that Philanthropy can play and be very supportive of.
Great, thank you. Sterling, you want to tackle Detroit?
No. For Chicago, we'd rather talk offline about that, Clark, but I don't think, I am no longer the president and CEO of the Kellogg Foundation, but what I read in the papers would suggest that the Kellogg Foundation will not be part of that grand bargain in Detroit in terms of saving the art, to save pensions, because the foundation's focused on vulnerable children. I don't know that deal will ever come together either, but I'm proud of the people that are trying it. I mean, I think worthy effort. I want to speak to the issue of working together in place and the opportunity that's here, and it goes to process and it goes to creativity. The fourth entity, if we have nonprofit practitioners and funders and government and even private sector leaders involved in this new thing called DF, I think another name for DF could be the doers flash mob. But what's still missing, and what I really worry about most, is not what works. but who cares? Ordinary citizens in this country, in Chicago, in the state of Illinois, do not feel that their elected representatives are doing a very good job of figuring out the hard trade-offs and value choices we need to make. And it's not hopeful when people lose faith in their elected representatives, but that was the structure we created in this country. There's a whole other movement funded by some foundations that looks at this fourth dimension. The first dimension of philanthropy is clearly charity. Give a man a fish. The second dimension is teaching a man to fish. Of course, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he'll sit in the boat and drink beer all day. You teach a woman to fish, not only will she catch fish, but she'll feed the entire village. The third stage, of course, is at the systems level. Why, is the water safe? How do people learn to fish? But there's a fourth level of philanthropy, and it's called community and civic engagement. Why aren't the people of Chicago and Illinois demanding more from their public problem-solving process? It's one thing to criticize government, but as Pogo said, we are the governance system in this country. We have a democracy. So what we need in this country is to innovate once again in the field of democracy, of citizen engagement, and this happens about every 30 or 40 or 50 years in this country. It happened at the Civil War, it happened when we ended slavery, it happened in the New Deal, and it's time that this country has to say, what we currently have is not working. And we are a democracy, and some of us still believe that ordinary people, if brought into a room like this, of widely different backgrounds, different values, could come up with common values and common solutions to 80 or 90% of the issues facing this country. And that is what philanthropy and place-based collaboratives like DF can do. It's not only bring our sectors together, but reach out to the ordinary people that love and care about this place and don't right now have confidence that the future of this country is going to be there for our children and our grandchildren, and that we're sort of coasting in a world of denial because our current democratic system is not struggling with the very hard issues we have to face. And that's something all of us have the power and the influence to affect. And I think bringing ordinary citizens into this exciting DF, I think, would be a very exciting fourth dimension in this highly collaborative work.
All right, terrific. You don't need to bring up politics twice in Illinois, so well said here. We're going to take a few more questions. Yes, over here on the right.
I'm Nancy Ronquillo, Service CEO for Children's Home and Aid, and the first thing I want to do is thank the Donors Forum for 40 years of leadership and say how excited we are for what you're bringing to the future. My question is related to the social impact bond buzz. And I'd like to know from the philanthropy folks whether you're going to get in and put some money on the pony, because I think Goldman Sachs of the world are eager to kind of get in this game, meaning funding important and effective, highly effective human service enterprises. And so where is the capital stack, and can you prime the pump for us?
Great. Social impact bonds. Yes, over here on my left.
Hi, my name is Demi Elschler. I'm with Access Living, and I'll bring up politics again. So I'm seeing a trend of this public-private partnership, which I understand that the voters must love, for there to be corporate dollars going into our parks and ball fields. Well, maybe ball fields is not a good example, but certainly the parks. Fighting gangs in Chicago, there's been a push for corporate money, and I understand that that's great, but then when I call up the corporations for support for my organization, they're telling me that they've already been called by the mayor, who they take his call quicker than they take mine. And it's already, I'm seeing an imbalance since Rom's become mayor. What can we do about it?
All right, where are the corporations on these issues? Great question. Thank you. Over here.
Thank you. I'm Eliza Salonier with First Defense Legal Aid. Two quick ones. They're related. Best case scenario, how can cross-sector collaboration increase all of our accountability to the people most directly affected by our policies, our missions, our budgets? And what are maybe some best practices for how to institutionalize that? I'm thinking things like, having our boards of directors reflect the people most affected by our missions or by the context that requires them. For instance, youth advising giving towards youth programming, etc.
Okay, great, thank you. We're going to take these two final questions and then turn it over for final responses. Yes.
My name is Wes Lindall. I'm the Dean of the School of Business and Nonprofit Management at North Park University. We're considering having a core class for our MBA students and our nonprofit students at the graduate level on multi-sector convergence. And if you were helping us design that, what exercise or experience would you say that has to be in that class?
All right, terrific, great. Yes, final question.
Hi, Amy Gupta from the Shriver Center. Thanks for the love. I was really heartened to hear that you all feel so positive about where grant-to-grantee relationships are going. I would love to hear an example of sort of what your perfect relationship looks like. Thank you.
All right. Okay, great. All right, who wants to start with that one? We've got social impact bonds. Where are the corporations? Multi-sector convergence class at an MBA program. Diversity in our organizations and decision making.
I'll give a good example of an ideal funder-grantee relationship. I think it happened at the Kellogg Foundation before I was there. Foundations love to put out RFPs and let people compete. And I think the feeling of applicants is, not only do I have to compete until the very final cut, just for the privilege of working with the foundation. So it seems to me already at the end of an RFP, one feels like, well, all the work I had to do to get to the relationship with you. Kellogg Foundation put out an RFP to the tribal colleges teaching Native Americans all over the country some years ago. And the tribal colleges responded in unison and said, we refuse to compete with one another for your dollars. And the Kellogg Foundation had never been confronted at the beginning of an RFP process by the natural constituents saying, sorry, rules need to change. And to the credit of the Kellogg Foundation and the people that were there before me, they sat down with the tribal leaders and said, okay, how will we do this together? And I take that lesson as one that funders can learn more when they think something they do is value neutral, and then they discover that in fact could be one of the most culturally incompetent things they've ever done. And I suspect the RFP process has other unintended negative consequences.
Great example, thank you.
I was just going to share, I hope I got the question right, but I think one of the challenges as a foundation, I would say, and also of a community foundation like ours, which is a bit smaller, is that as we challenge the practitioners and community institutions to develop the shared vision and shared language, we are going to have to be intentional about building the capacity, because what we've learned through our experience, through our success of our youth initiatives, that there are only so many local institutions that can participate through the RFP process. That there are some agencies that have strong missions and have started great programs, but they will need capacity support to be able to participate at that level. Because if we want them to do systems change, we are going to need to support them and level the playing field so that everybody can engage at that level. It's also challenging us as funders to be ready to go up to bat as well. If we are asking you to use data and to be able to demonstrate impact, we have to be able to understand and be transparent ourselves in what we are doing in our own homes, in our own space as a community foundation, to make sure that we are doing right by our donors. And so there's a lot of capacity building that has to happen at all levels. And hopefully this plays out if we are truly committed to continuous improvement. Are we really developing a shared vision and having shared accountability? I think that's the part that a lot of us fear, both as funders and also there as practitioners. Are we willing to open up ourselves, saying, well, maybe this program isn't as unique as we thought it was? And can I be honest about that? And will we as funders be open to that, saying, what can we do to really make your program as impactful as we all need it to be?
Yeah, I just want to say, at the risk of calling out one foundation in this room of scores of foundations, I mean, when I think about a perfect relationship, sorry about this, guys, but the Michael Reese Health Trust just immediately comes to mind. When I ran the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, they helped catalyze an initiative called the Chicago Housing and Health Partnership. And in my opinion, it transformed the AIDS Foundation, it transformed how we do housing in Chicago, it brought sectors together, housing and healthcare, and AIDS providers and non-AIDS providers in a way that just never happened before. And it was the leadership of the trust that brought many other foundations, many in this room, Hope Brothers, Chicago Community Trust, so many others that I can't even remember. But to me, the catalytic nature of a place like Michael Reese to really, radically transform the sector and how we do the work. I think it's a model which I wish everybody would read about. It brought millions of dollars to Chicago that we wouldn't have had otherwise. It landed us in major publications, including JAMA and others.
All right.
Close to perfect.
Great. Anybody else want to weigh in?
A couple of comments. To the woman who had the comment about social impact bonds, and to Mimi's question about, like, why doesn't my call get taken, and who should care about that? These are questions for donors forum, too, I would say, in terms of what does it mean to be UDF. And so, like, what's the role in catalyzing better education and influence around getting people to jump in around social impact bonds? So the folks up here, maybe with the exception of Sterling, we don't make decisions on, like, should we be able to do that? But, like, what's the, again, process around what that looks like to get people to even better understand and accept what that is and understand what the power of that is. So that's one thing. And I think to the question about power dynamics, like how do we create a new platform that really does level the playing field? So I know that Donors Forum is having these conversations about what is a member, what does that look like, and what's what influence does the new DF have in helping to have for access living and whoever else doesn't feel like they have a voice. So that's like the big promise around figuring out how to be better collaborators, I think.
Yeah, I want to address the social impact bond too. I don't know who's going to fund it, but I would just say to this group and to other prominent people who can influence social impact bonds in this country, if we don't do this soon, I'm not sure that the nonprofit sector as we know it is going to survive. Our competition, I don't feel, is each other. I don't feel it's other nonprofits in a similar space. I think our competition is the private sector and for-profit companies. I'm seeing this more and more where government investment is going to for-profit entities in healthcare and mental health care and substance abuse treatment. And if we don't figure out a way to get private sector investment, not just charity, into our work, our sector will disappear. Somebody's earlier question about whether, government could work without us. Today they can't, but I'm not sure that in 10 years they can. They're going to find other partners. So one, we need that investment. And two, I think it behooves all of us to partner much more strategically and wisely with for-profit companies. And again, not for charitable donations, but for somehow where our mission and their profit motive comes together.
All right, well said. Sterling, because you're our guest, you do get the last word in our conversation.
It's on social impact bonds as well. First of all, you are very lucky here in Chicago. I think one of the leading philanthropists who will really pioneer work in social impact bonds is J.B. Pritzker, and his staffer, Jeff Schoenberg. I was recently visiting there a few weeks ago, and especially taking what Pritzker Foundation is focused on. One of their focuses is early childhood. I've been a little, one, the good news is the foundation in financial world is gaga about mission-driven investing in social impact bonds, but so often in our field, there are 20 conferences talking about abstract ideas and 2 or 3 examples of real work. I've been surprised that some of the early social impact bonds have gone to reducing the recidivism rate of prisoners, but it is something that's easy to measure. Being an early childhood advocate, it would make sense to me, and the Kellogg Foundation did all the philanthropic work to prepare the way for JB and I think Goldman Sachs to invest in Utah on a pay-for-performance. We know that more than half of the achievement gap in low-income and poor children is created between the ages of birth and 5. That's a very specific time in a child and a family's life, and investing in that period of life in a robust, aggressive way to prevent the achievement gap from being created is something that I think social impact bonds and pay for performance, and I think the Pritzker Foundation is targeting and narrowing right in on that. And because today we pay so much for the cost of failure, for kids arriving in kindergarten not ready to be successful in an ordinary public school, and feeling in their first 4 years of school by 3rd grade that they're failures, it is no surprise that so many kids end up having their potential wasted and costing society tens of thousands of dollars. We can afford to experiment and innovate in investing in the success of those very same kids much more aggressively than we have in the last 50 years in the anti-poverty world. And I think that's where, when our state legislatures and our federal government says, sorry, we'd love to, but we can't afford it, social impact bonds will give our sector, when it innovates around things it's been working on for decades, it says, no, we can borrow from the future in a true pay-for-performance way. And I agree with Mark. This sector knows how to get outcomes working with the less empowered and less enfranchised people. We do need to take the lead. I think Mark's challenge is a great one. Thank you.
That's great. Clearly there is a lot more to be said. Thank you to our speakers and panelists. Thank you for joining us in Chicago, Sterling. We hope to have you back and see where we are. Maybe we will be called the doer splash mob.